Well, President Trump will head to Capitol Hill on February 24 to update America on the state of our union, but some Democrats are already planning disruptions in defiance of guidance from House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. If they do it, it wouldn't be the first time House Democrats pulled theatrics. Remember these stunts?
The chair now directs the Sergeant-at-Arms to restore order. Remove this gentleman from the chamber.
So what does the party gain from these displays? Is there anything the president could say that they would agree with? Joining me now to discuss, Turning Point Action Chief Operating Officer Tyler Boyer, Colorado Ethics Commission Chair Sarah Mercer, and Democratic strategist Kevin Stroff. Thank you all for joining me. So first off, I just want to say I think the State of the Union should be a letter like it was in the old days, but we put on this big show and the president gives a speech no matter who it is. But Kevin, congressional Democrats are trying to potentially plan some disruption of the president's speech. Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries has asked them not to do that. Is it helpful or hurtful for them to do this, especially in an election year?
You know, I think we have seen those stunts tend to backfire. And what comes to mind, actually, is you remember Marjorie Taylor Greene, who tried to heckle Joe Biden, and he kind of had that sparring with her. It made the night for him, so it really backfired. I actually think Jeffries is smart here. The reality is the State of the Union is incredibly weak on the economy, right? People are paying 28% more today for orange juice, 15% more for beef than they were a year ago under Joe Biden. So you want Americans focused on that. ICE is in masked agents murdering nurses, moms in the street. You want people talking about that. Instead, the White House is focused on a cover-up of a pedophile sex trafficking ring and beefing with Cardi B. So I think the State of the Union is strong enough a message to counteract that Democrats should just stick to that, not the stunts.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think the Department of Justice has released 3 million documents, planning to release even more about the Epstein files. So transparency is certainly not a cover-up. Tyler, let's go to you. I mean, Democrats, do they have to interrupt because they don't have anything really to run on? I mean, the economy is actually doing very well. It's turning back to a private sector economy. Inflation rates have slowed, and the president is moving into the year with the big, beautiful bill implications of people getting tax cuts and GDP going to be predicted at 5%.
Yeah, I mean, well, let's see how many actually get in, because I guess you have to show ID to get in the State of the Union. So I know that's a real difficult subject for the Democrats, the congressional Democrats right now. But no, seriously, we have a president that's actually, I think, hitting stride going into the midterms right now. We have an opportunity to start capitalizing on a Trump-backed economy that's going to start to spring back. We saw the Democrats really try to shake up things and stop the tariff game that has been so successful that the president is going to be able to run on later in this year. And that's, I think that's what they're most scared of, really, truly, is as many of the successes and how the president's been able to turn things around since Joe Biden.
Sarah, Democrats have tried to position themselves as the adults in the room, the ones who can be trusted with all of these big issues. If they pull some kind of stunt that disrupts the speech, is that going to destroy that narrative when they're trying to win over people who maybe be disenfranchised with the current political environment?
Yeah, I think you nailed it and just hit the nail on the head there that, there's a real opportunity for Democrats with moderates and unaffiliated voters who are going to decide the 2026 congressional elections. And what this really boils down to my mind, is respect. And if you look at how the Democrats behaved at last year's State of the Union, I mean, it was an embarrassment. I think even more than the practical outlook for what's going to happen at the November elections, this really is about, like, where are we as a country in terms of our trust of our institutions? And Democrats, by pulling these types of stunts, are really just continue to harm and erode how Americans feel about Congress and about our democracy. It's a real missed opportunity for them to not recognize that being respectful, listening to the other side, and then making their case in, in debates that happen on the congressional floor, and when they have opportunities to speak in their sort of counter State of the Union, that's the time for them to make their case.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't promote competence or confidence in being able to handle big issues. But Kaivan, you had a piece over the weekend calling for Democrats to actually work to build support rather than rallying around the rebooted Kamala HQ account. In your piece, you wrote that the Democratic Party will never rebuild unless it has its own version of Turning Point USA. So clearly you don't think Kamala HQ is the way to do that, but Turning Point's done a really great job of rallying young people around a hopeful message. How do Democrats compete with that?
Well, I do think, right, you have a lot of the donor class, the consultant class, they always want to hit that easy button of the short-term win, going viral, getting millions of impressions. But the reality is, as much as I hate this as a Democrat, a lot of people took the wrong lesson away from what Charlie Kirk did, which is he built a $100 million top-down, every day of the year grassroots organizing machine. Yes, there were viral clips that were part of that, but Democrats need to actually take a step back and play that long game. Now, it just so happens Turning Point is actually having its own civil war right now over the Epstein files, over Charlie Kirk's assassination. So I do actually wonder, bringing that back to the State of the Union, who will the guests be, right? Will a Republican that wants to stick it to Trump bring Candace O? Will they bring Marjorie Taylor Greene? I'm very curious to see that.
Tyler, Charlie Kirk and Turning Point deserve a lot of credit for President Trump's re-election and placing him back in the Oval Office. I know that Turning Point is doing a lot of grassroots work in a number of elections around the country. What is your response to the left trying to build what you guys have built, or maybe you can talk about what you're looking for moving ahead in the elections based on the grassroots movement that you have available to mobilize voters on Election Day?
Well, you just heard it. The Democrats live in this alternate universe in delusion of division, because that's their only hope that they can defeat the Republicans and the conservative movement if we are divided, because they know they can't build it themselves at this point.
You are divided.
And that's really the hardest part. And that's the hardest part for the left, is that we become better organizers from the bottom up. And that's been on showcase in the most key areas across the country. That's why Democrats lost literally every single swing state last election, and they're on track to do it all over again here in this next election as well.
Yeah, I would point out that having a few people who are very loud does not equal division among Trump's base or among the Republican Party or conservatives in general. But Sarah, before we go, I want to talk to you about President Trump bringing up the SAVE Act in his State of the Union address. This is an act that would require citizenship to vote in, or proof of citizenship to vote in elections. You had the number of Democrats show their ID on the House floor to vote against this bill. This is something that is supported by 75% of Democrats, 84% of the country. So what do you think is going to happen in the Senate? Do you think that more Democrats should come together on an issue that the majority of the country wants?
Again, I think it is about building trust in the institutions. And I do think Democrats should get behind a reasonable voter ID law, because that will help to ensure that voters feel like their elections are safe, which is something, and they're secure, and that they can have confidence in the outcomes, which is something that certainly has been a surprise to me, that voters have really lost that trust. And seems like that's a step that that we can take together as a country to just build back that trust.
Yeah, I have no doubt that the president will bring it up. Tyler Boyer, Sarah Mercer, and Kaivan Shroff, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.